Welcome to the Lightforge podcast. This is ADWCTA.
This is the Merps. Welcome to the last Lightforge, maybe
This
ever.
maybe ever. This is the last Lightforge. We announced it on stream last week on Sunday. We were on Twitch. We didn't record a Lightforge podcast because really there was nothing to talk about in the arena. But we did announce that this was going to be the last one. It's been almost 8 entire years. I don't even know what episode this is, but it's like almost 400 episodes or something. Um, So we have been here for a long, long time, and this is not like a reflection. It's not like we're like, oh, this game sucks now. We're not, supporting the game anymore. If anything, the game is in a very good place compared to most of the points in history. But just with the new baby, which yeah, everyone told me it was going to take a lot of time and energy and stuff, and I was like, you're all wrong, and they were right. They were not wrong. So this paternity leave is a lot less leavey than I wanted it to be. And the fact that Diablo 4 is coming out June 1st. We've said this for years. Like I think we said this probably in the first episode of the Lightforge and on Twitch chat, or like right after, when someone was, maybe the second episode, when someone was like, oh cool, this is awesome, how long is this gonna, like, are you guys gonna keep doing it? And then we jokingly said, not jokingly at all, that we will do this until Diablo 4 comes out, and then we will disappear and play Diablo 4. So that time is here, or fast approaching. So yeah.
Less than a month, and we have like the early access, right? It's like we
Yeah,
paid for the early
we paid
access.
for 3 or 4 early days of the game, which is
That's
key.
that's
Yeah,
huge.
like I'll pay money for that.
Like okay, all these people are first of all, people are looking at the wrong thing. So there is so much discussion right now. People are like hunting and trying to prove that the battle pass is pay to win.
Oh my
Look,
god.
if you want to hate on D4, you're looking at the wrong place. It's not the battle pass. It's the pay to play ahead of everyone else, and therefore you have such a huge advantage when you trade. Like you do get more stuff,
But
right?
they're
Like
they're
time is money, time is resources.
they're doing it because that's recurring, right? This early release thing is just one
Yep.
time charge, so you just view it as like, hey, look, the game. I know they say the game is $60, but it's really $90 and $100 for the collector's edition with the soundtrack or whatever the hell the extra $10 get you, and faster access to the battle pass. I don't know. I didn't even get it. I just got the $90 package. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so we're gonna be D4ing pretty hard for at least the month of June and probably the month of July, maybe even August, because season one has been announced and it's starting in mid to late July. So I'm gonna say it's unlikely for us to come back to Hearthstone before the next, like very unlikely. Like there's a 5% chance, less than a 5% chance for us to come back before the August expansion for Hearthstone comes out. And even then, I don't know. I think it's I thought it was like more of a 50-50 chance for us to come back for that, but I think it's lower than that now, given that the Diablo 4 season one is only starting in mid-July. So Diablo 4 has to really kind of suck for me to like give up on D4 season one like 2 weeks in and go back to Hearthstone. So we're looking at, I don't know, some chance that we're going to come back for the August expansion, and a much larger chance that we're going to come back for either midway through the August expansion or for the December expansion. And of course, we will most likely, if not almost certainly, be back if Arena 2.0 gets released, whenever that happens, which they don't really tell us anything about it. So I don't know. Could happen this year. Probably not gonna happen this year, but that's kind of our timeline.
Yep. Look, I haven't. No, I played Arena a decent amount, like when this expansion dropped, but I just need more. If I'm going to be playing more Hearthstone, I just need more than there currently is. So there has to be some sort of Arena 2.0 for me to really come back. I've made no kind of. I haven't really pulled any punches in terms of why I don't find this meta extremely fun. Um, and that's with me right now. I think some people enjoy it. I think for those people who are just playing a couple of times a week, it could be really fun. Even all
That's
the
what
pre
we
stuff,
do. Like for like the last like 4 years, we've only played a couple times a week.
yeah.
Like even when you were playing, we were like when I normally play, I only play on stream, and so I play like 4 hours on Friday nights and then like 2 hours on Sundays. That's my entire playtime. I average like 1 hour of Hearthstone a day. So I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's in a terrible place right now. And they're doing a patch, or like a hot fix or whatever. They announced some adjustments. I don't know if it's already hit yet or if it's happening early next week. But it's coming, and it'll hopefully make things a bit better. Um, but yeah. So first off, we just wanted to announce our schedule, and so don't expect. It's been like 2 or 3 weeks since the last Lightforge. Basically, we last did the Lightforge when the baby came, and I came back from the hospital to do it. I was still on that like, oh, I can do it kind of vibes, and then the next week I'm like, no, I definitely can't do it, and then the week after that I'm like, I can sort of do it, but there's not much to talk about, and now we're like, all right, it's time to shut it down for a bit. So you can look at it as the license. This could be literally the last episode if we don't come back. It's more
Good.
likely to be a hiatus because we'll probably come back at some point in the not too distant future, but also not like in the next couple months or anything. So the last episode with a question mark. Uh, yeah. I thought this is a good time to kind of. Oh, and if you're wondering, we're not coming back, so there's probably no more YouTube content for a while. I don't know how to make Diablo 4 YouTube content. We'll see. If there is Diablo 4 YouTube content, it will probably not happen like launch week or even the week after, but
Well,
like
no, there's a
later.
lot of ways to do it, but you have to like, okay, because our YouTube content has always just been very um organic,
Yeah,
right? With the
the
with the
Twitch.
no, there's no way to organically make it. You have to
Yes,
like
you have
really
to
make
doom
it.
it. Yeah. So like, unless we decide to launch a Hellforge podcast for Diablo 4, which TBA, I'm not. I think I wanted to launch it, and Merps talked me out of it. At least pre-release. So we'll see how D4 goes. We'll do a late launch of the podcast if we get super into D4, and it seems like we're going to be doing it for a long time. Which I don't know. But other than that, I don't know how we're going to do Diablo 4 YouTube content. So it means that until Hearthstone comes back, there probably won't be significant YouTube content. But Twitch wise, we're not like quitting. Like we're not like stopping stream. I mean, we are for like 3 weeks. Uh, there's going to be no streams on Twitch for 3 weeks between now and the first Sunday when after Diablo 4 comes out. So June 4th is the next time you can catch us on Twitch, and I don't know if we'll upload that to YouTube. I'll see how it goes, but we'll just basically kind of share our thoughts on Diablo 4 during that hangout. Like it'll just be a hangout. I don't think we're gonna be playing anything. And then maybe there'll be Diablo 4 streaming content afterwards. I mean, there definitely will be. It's just a matter of when it starts. I'm gonna start streaming Diablo 4 as soon as I get like a little bit into the end game. I am not going to stream the campaign. That's for me and to like figure out mechanics and stuff. So there won't be. It's not like on launch day you won't find, at least you won't find me streaming. I don't know if you're going to stream, but either way, the D4 streams will be coming in June. Um, so yeah, that's where we are. Um, let's talk about Hearthstone. The last talk about Hearthstone. Because this is the last episode, I feel like we should kind of just take a broad backwards looking um a backwards view on the 8 years that we've been doing this podcast and all the things that have been happening. Um I've broken it down on my like little like notes into three things that are part of the good, and then three things that are the bad, as far as this Hearthstone Arena experience has been. Because like I think you'd be lying to yourself if you look back at your time playing Hearthstone Arena and you're like, this was mostly good. it was kind of a mixed experience for everybody. There were certainly very good things about it, which is why we keep doing it. But there was also a lot of times where it was very frustrating on the game end or whatever. So I think this is a good time to kind of wrap it up and talk about it. You want to kick off the first one? Start on a positive note.
All right, sure. Yeah, we're gonna start off positive. And I guess the first thing we should always talk about is part of the reason why we do a podcast in the first place, right? It's the audience, it's the community, it's the people who are like really passionate about this stuff. Because if there was nobody passionate about it, if there was no audience, then we're literally just two crazy people talking into the wind. But there are lots of people who enjoy it, lots of people who either enjoy the competitive nature or just want to have fun and want to learn, right? They want to learn, they want to talk about it. So that's definitely one of the most enjoyable things about Hearthstone Arena. It's
Yeah.
not just the opponents that you face who are nameless, and now there's tons of these like random letter accounts, which are frustrating. But it's the people. As much as I get frustrated, some of them are on Arena HS. Um, Others are in the chats of all the streamers, and they talk about plays. Um, we have disagreements about card evaluations. They tell us we suck at it. That's fine. Um, that has been one of the big positives, and I think it's what's kept the game healthy for quite a long
Yes,
time.
definitely. And when Merp says audience, he doesn't mean like an audience sitting there watching us. Like our audience or the Hearthstone Arena community as a quote unquote audience is very interactive and they contribute. So we look at Arena HS all the time. That's everyone's thoughts on Twitch chat. He can argue whether I look at Twitch chat or not, but I eventually get to you guys, even if it's 5 or 10 minutes later. And it's all interactive. And then the other people that are part of the arena community, right? Like our mods, who we talked to, we played other games with, and we've some of the mods have been around, and some of the viewers. Someone was like in chat earlier was like, "Oh, I was here for the first Lightforge podcast," and I was like, "That's right." Because the first Lightforge podcast didn't happen until we had that co-op with Crip, and then Crip sent a bunch of like I think he rated us one day, and promoted us in one of his videos, and that was over the summer, and we launched the podcast like a month after that, or maybe 2 months after that. So there's actually a lot of people here probably who have been here through the first podcast, like 400 episodes ago, and 7 8 years ago. So this is just the core arena community. It's also the competitive players who are streamers. A lot of them who were not streamers when we first started the podcast, and who have become streamers. Some of them very successful, and all of them, presumably, hopefully, fingers crossed, having fun playing the arena. It's just been the community has been so good. It has been so good since day one. When we first started the stream, before even the podcast, was just the arena coop, and how people reached out to us, and how people, like very established people, whether we were talking about Crip, Hafu, Trump, like the arena community really was hungry for more content and for more just people who are really into this stuff. And I hope we were able to pass it forward to the people who came a bit after us, like Collins, like Shady, and then the wave even after that, right? Like Redbeard, Judge, Coast, and whatnot. Um, it's it's very nice. And having played Diablo Immortal for the last year, I could tell you that this is not the case with every game or every game mode, or probably even most games or game modes. Now, Diablo Immortal is probably the worst of the worst examples, but just a night and day experience as far as the community goes. And I don't mean like our clan members. Our clan is great for the vast majority of the parts, but like just go on the Diablo Immortal like subreddit, which has calmed so down since the early days, but it's still just full of rampant misinformation that gets upvoted like crazy by other ignorant people, full of people who can't even read, like commenting and getting upvoted, and the people who are actually talking sense Like some of the times they also get upvoted, but oftentimes they also get downvoted. I'm not just talking about me. I'm talking about other people who are also trying to talk sense and reality into people. Just the core of like logic and improvement and analysis and kind of having a baseline IQ of which to engage in a community, especially around a strategy game, which I know Diablo Immortal isn't, but like Hearthstone definitely is. It has been so refreshing, like looking back at it, because at the time I took it for granted. The last game that I seriously played before Hearthstone was Civ, and that was a very deep strategy, game with so many moving parts, and so there was a lot of that kind of like nerdy, like number crunching and like whatever. I took Hearthstone community for granted, but it could so easily go the other way, and in a Blizzard game, no less, right? Like a kind of a sister game to Hearthstone. So this whole community has been awesome. Whether it's just the people posting on Reddit, the people not even posting, upvoting on Reddit. Like upvotes are powerful. And look no further than Diablo Immortal to see what happens when the dumb people have the power and the voting power. Because that just gets perpetuated. And then, like, I don't know, 3 months later, they figure out that they were dumb. And the rest of us were like, well, you see that comment that got downvoted -5? That was the right answer. Everybody told you. And the fact that it just doesn't happen in Hearthstone Arena. Like, we don't have to post anything. Just the correct things just rise to the top is pretty amazing. And also the creators and the people. It's not like Diablo Immortal creators are like, all shit. But it's not the same type of community as the Hearthstone Arena community. It's like far more assholes, for lack of a better word. And
There's
that's,
still some assholes here, but
there's still,
yes,
yeah.
if you look at other games and communities, it's worse. Like
Mhm.
the Hearthstone community is the best. It's not perfect, but it is the best that I have seen. And like I've seen like the Overwatch community. I've seen the
Mhm.
Diablo Immortal shit show. It's not even a community. It's just a shit show. Um, I've seen quite a few. I've seen even outside the Pokemon TCG community. Terrible. It's full of terrible, dumb people. I love the hobby, but oh my god, everyone there is
There's just
dumb
such
as
a
bricks
there's
and
just so
toxic.
so different between a strategy game and not a strategy game. Like that's what I
No,
realized.
yeah, it really is. But and look, I'm just a jaded person, in general. But no, this has definitely been the best community because it is a community in which you can try to reason with people and it gets somewhere.
Yeah.
Um, that helps a lot. Like that helps a lot. And it's not predominantly or like it's not dominated by dumb people and then that just becomes the law, right? That
Yeah.
becomes the rule. Because if 90% of people think the wrong thing, it does become the quote right thing.
It doesn't even
It's
need to be
not
90. If like 65% of people think the wrong thing, then it's maybe the right thing. I think by
right.
like 80, 85, probably like just 80, 75 even, you're done.
Yeah.
Like I'm not I would not have made this podcast for this long if it weren't for the community. Not even close.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
It's been great.
this podcast is for you guys. This podcast is for the other creators out there who like listen to us for whatever reason. Even though for a while now, a lot of these other creators have been like quite notably like play more and are more in tune with the meta than we have been. And this is what the podcast is for. This is what the number crunching is for, what the theory crafting is for, what the analysis is for, what the kind of game design elements that have been sprinkled in. Like through this journey of this Lightforge podcast, and the whatever, like we've created like algorithms. I've done game development work and game balance work for a card game. Like just a lot of very interesting experiences have happened here, and it's all stemming from kind of this big community of Hearthstone arena players and Hearthstone players generally. And it's just incredibly thankful, but not only like thankful is like how we feel towards the community, but more importantly, the community I think should like always really be looking around at themselves and just very happy that they exist, that we all exist together, like in this community, because it's so much worse in most places, and possibly like super bad. Like even in other communities that are good, this one really stands out, I think.
Yep. All right. So what's the next thing that you're thankful for,
Okay.
or that you think was like really good?
The next good thing about Arena, Hearthstone Arena, and this, during the time of this podcast in the last 7 years is the pace of the new content. The pace of the new content has really picked up, and I don't want to like. I don't think a dev has ever said this, but I think that they are actually creating neutral cards now with half an eye out for Arena. Because in the last couple of years, some of these neutral cards that have come out, you just can't possibly see any other application for them besides an arena or duels, right? Like some kind of like limited format event. Um, maybe brawl. But they used to be like if you remember Nax came out and then GVG came out, and Nax was a mini set, and then GVG was a real set. And then Blackrock Mountain was a mini set, and then TGT. So we started the podcast right before TGT came out, the grand tournament, after Blackrock. Blackrock Mountain had like 30 cards, maybe 15. I don't even remember. It was like no amount of cards. And so we were just in the GVG meta effectively for like 8 months until more than 8 months, like 9 or 10 months until TGT came out, whenever that was. That was the pace. That was the expected pace of releases. Then we moved on from there to 3 main releases a year. And now we're at 3 main releases and 3 mini sets. And a higher percentage of those cards that are being released have like interesting arena applications than they did before. Before they would change everything because there wasn't enough cards in the pool. But now they have they just have very interesting applications in the arena. Arena is just more interesting now, and it gets changed up more now. And we have the wild rotations and the different rotations to keep spicing the game up. So we talk a lot about Arena not being directly supported by the Hearthstone development team, but just the baseline support of Hearthstone in general and the pace that is picked up there has been so good for the Arena experience. Like so good. It's never, well, it's not never a dull moment. Sometimes the events go for too long, but it's generally not dull for long, right? Things keep changing. Before there were no balancing patches ever, right? And then they started doing a balance patch every like 4 months, and now they do like 3 balance patches a month or something. Like it's getting kind of crazy. It's like a normal game where they keep updating everything. So there's just so much stuff that's going on now, and the pace of this new content has been such a huge improvement from where this game was in the early going. And Arena has been a real big beneficiary of it, even if that is not the goal of the development team.
Yep. No, it's been great. Matt London and the modes team, the communication has been better. There have been a lot of changes. Some I very much so disagree with the change or how it's implemented. Like the new leaderboard, right? I
Mm-hmm.
have made my thoughts very clear, and a lot of people have made their thoughts very clear that it's a convoluted system that doesn't have to be that complex. And because of the way it is, it incentivizes these weird behaviors that no dev should be incentivizing, right? Which is starting up new accounts, abandoning accounts, doing this over and over and over again. If you want to have the highest score, if you care about leaderboards at all, after you play 30 runs, if you're happy with your score, you will always, without fail, 100% ditch the account. You just have to. You have to
Mm-hmm.
ditch the account. So I think that is like the major thing that they've done recently, in which I'm just like, you are just totally wrong on this, and I'm 100% sure on this. It's not one of those things where I'm
No,
like,
there
well,
is
like
no other side. The
there
other
is no other
side
side.
is like they
Yes,
didn't have enough time and
like
development resources. That is the other
yes,
side. So they'll eventually get to it and fix it.
yeah. And you know how I know that they'll eventually fix it? Because they fixed it once, like 7 years ago. Not 7 years, but like 5 years ago. It was actually like 6 years ago, something like that. And the language that they used was basically like, yes, we recognize that like people were creating new accounts and this is bad and we never want to promote this, blah blah. And I understand that was like the Ben Brode regime, right? But same principles should apply.
Mhm.
So look, I'm pointing that out as to something I very much so disagree with. But Matt Lunda and team, I mean, they've actually made changes. The fact
Yeah.
that we're talking about something. We don't have a Lightforge podcast anymore where if you guys remember, we're just like, we're not going to criticize them for the next year because they told us that nothing will change for the
I
next year.
remember that. I remember when
Um,
Ixar just came out and was like, for the next year and until we
yeah.
say otherwise, there will be no development in Arena that will be released.
And you know what? What was our response at that time? Thank you for telling the
Yes.
truth. Thank you for doing this
We
because the
love
past
that.
2 years before then, you would always come out during release time and somebody would always ask a question about arena and Ben Brode is like, we very much so care about our arena players. Look, I Ben Brode, great like spokesperson, great marketing person. Look, I'm not going to put it all on him. Uh, People defended Ben because of his charisma until they couldn't anymore
Mm.
because like even the most staunch defender of Ben Brode, like after a while they're like, you're literally just saying the exact same thing every single time. Um, and yeah, that
I
was
mean,
that
Ben
was
Brode's a
really
great
frustrating.
example of like the person who is the best to bring a product to launch is not
Yeah.
necessarily the person that is the best to scale it or to iterate on it. Like, Ben Brode wasn't great at developing Hearthstone after Hearthstone launched. He was great getting Hearthstone to launch and creating a freaking epic product at the time.
And I
Like,
don't
and
think there
then
is
he like
anybody
sold the
better to,
hell out of it.
yeah, I don't think there was any better developer person to hype up a game,
Yeah,
right? Like
yeah.
he was the ultimate hype person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And from all accounts, like within the Hearthstone team or whatever, everyone loved him. He was a great leader, and it
Yeah,
was
yeah,
it was
definitely.
wonderful. But from a player's perspective, you saw what happened with Hearthstone. In the years after it was released, until Ben departed, and then the team had another, I don't know, half year or a year to get the new philosophy underway, and the game just got so much better afterwards. Um, so yeah, it's been the pace of the new content, and I think this is one of the things. Like I bring it up because I think it's one of the underappreciated things about Arena, which is a lot of focus gets put on what is done specifically for Arena, but that's the whole thing with a limited format. You don't actually have to do anything for the limited format for there to be continuous new things and exciting developments. And there's a reason why we can do like a 6 to 8 hour like marathon review every 4 months, and then another like 4 to 5 marathon review every 2 months. And back in the day, the Lightforge podcast, a lot of it was like 2-3 versus 3-2. How do we use one versus the other? Because that was one of the most important things in the game. Nowadays, we can talk about new cards. We can talk about cards rotating back. We talk about synergies. We talk about new mechanics. There's just so much more to talk about in the game that we're not even going back to. And because the game gets more complex, the other stuff also just matters less. But it's just the game has developed. And as far as games developing goes, and as far as power creep and whatever goes, this game hasn't like jumped the shark yet. Like it's getting real close to it.
Oh, we're getting close.
We
We're getting
got
there.
real close to it, but we're not at the point now because one thing that you mean like our system that we grade stuff, that's a system based on the fundamentals of Hearthstone, like raw numbers from the system itself. That is not based on the relative power of the cards in the pool. So if this ranking system was based on the relative power of the cards in the pool, like say the Lightforge tier list used to be, where 100 was the average card you were offered always, then like everything will just keep scaling up as things get overpowered. But here in the new system where we just do a tier, we don't do that. We don't have the power to do that. It's all raw based on like what one attack is worth and whatever. And if you've noticed, since they power creep to like S plus plus whatever tier cards for legendaries, and since the existence of S tier cards started becoming a thing for class cards, there really hasn't been that many S tier class cards. Like the power level from last December, 2 Decembers ago to now, the top line power level has not changed. And I think the next step will be over the shark. So we're very close to it, but we haven't actually gone over it. And the S tier cards are also fine as long as you nerf their offering rates. And the team has been doing a very good job of nerfing their offering rates in the last this year so far at least, and most of the year before that. So between the new content and the balancing team kind of stepping in and like fixing the like most rough of the edges, this is it's not large upkeep for Arena for it to continually be like a decent product with a lot of new stuff. And that's what I think the community doesn't give it enough credit because we just take it for granted because it's not done for the Arena really. And the things that's actually done for the Arena are like the ridiculous obvious stuff. Like Pack the House needs a lower offering rate. It should not be a common card in Shaman. And then they nerfed it, and you're like, can you nerf it more? Come on, guys. It's not that hard. Just change a number. This is clearly not enough. But we're missing the part where it's like the system's already self-balancing and adding tons of new cards in all the time. So we're working from a good base.
Yeah.
All
Okay.
right.
Let's talk about the next thing that was really good about the Arena during all of this time. And that's really the skill versus luck balance in and like applying all of these fundamentals into it as well. So I understand every single meta, especially now, there's always a discussion of, is there enough skill in the meta? And
Mhm.
that so because of this discussion, I think some people get the wrong impression that like, wow, for so many years now, skill just doesn't matter, or the discrepancy is so huge, right? That it's just so huge. It's a conversation that we always need to have, but if you want to really get into it, it's like if the optimal, and I'm not this will differ from person to person, which
Mhm.
is another factor, but it's like, oh, if the optimal luck kind of factor is like, I don't know, 60 units of luck, whatever it is it 55 units of luck right now or 65? Like that's really what is discussing. It's not like, are we at 100 units of luck now or are we at 5 units of luck?
Yeah, because you
It's
look
never
at
like
other
that.
game, and a lot of the other games are at like 20 units of luck, and we
Yeah.
don't play that game. And some games are like chess, and it's at 0 units of luck, and we don't play chess. So the fundamentals of Hearthstone Arena is set at least for us, it's a really comfortable level, quite consistently throughout the years. I mean, it's getting lower now, and it used to be higher than what I'm gonna say. But the win rate of a top player picking the optimal class is about 75% win rate. Now, that is like around like 8 wins, not quite 9 wins. You also have to factor in that a lot of 12-win runs don't actually have a loss to it. So I don't know what the exact like thing for it is, but it's I think it's something like 8 point something wins. And that's what the top players have been able to consistently get. Nowadays, you can't really keep that up, but it's not that far from it, right? And we're at like a low ebb of the skill versus luck measurement, but it's still within that band. You look at almost every other competitive game, including Hearthstone Ranked, and the including Battlegrounds for the most part, at the very top. It's not that as you play and get better at the game, you win more. It's that as you play and get better at the game, your MMR ranking goes up more, and you win the same amount until you're at like the very tippy top, and they can't find like similarly skilled players as you. But Arena is not like that. This structure is so it's so rare in today's game development, and it's a very unfavored structure. And the new dev team, as well as some of the old dev teams, have continuously pitched the idea to change it, right, to like somehow bring MMR into Arena. But one of the best things about Arena is that there is no MMR that equalizes your win rate to 50%. If Arena continuously made me win only 50% of the games, I wouldn't have played for this long. Because I like knowing that I could beat more people than then they can beat me. Now, you could argue and you should argue that you shouldn't be putting like say new players or something like in the same pool as me, and you should do some kind of MMR matchmaking, but it should never approach 50% like all the other games. Um, that's it's a personal preference, but it's also the visceral feeling of hey, if I improve, I can win more, and that is totally lost in most of today's PvP games. And that is a feeling that for Arena, one, it's kind of the core of the whole Arena system that was set up and unchanged for 8 years, and it's been great for 8 years. And two, it's what kind of sets it apart from all the other game modes and all the other games and all the other game modes in Hearthstone. And that is something that I really hope doesn't change, but that is so huge. Like you look at win distribution, right? Not to get too political with this. I don't mean this in a political way. I just mean in a this is what would happen way. If you took $1 from everybody on Earth and you gave it to one person, right? Like in a lottery system, that one person is going to have like $8 billion, and everybody else will not notice the difference. So that newly minted 8 billionaire is going to feel great, and everybody else is not going to notice any difference. Now, if you do that the reverse, it would be the exact opposite, where that person who would have gotten lucky and been the billionaire is now just a normal person, and everybody else has one extra dollar and does not notice the difference. So, in a highly distributed system where you can distribute as you go up, because remember, in this game, it is part luck, but it's also a lot part skill. So we're not randomly picking a billionaire. We're just letting the people that become the most successful become a billionaire, right? In this more scaled system, you get to become a billionaire, for lack of a better way of saying this. Whereas in most PvP game formats, the game is set up in a way that you can never earn a single cent more than anyone else. And that is discouraging for someone who is trying to work hard at the game because they enjoy it, right? It's the difference between, like, I mean, obviously in a game with a whole lot of luck, it's not like pure capitalism, but it's the difference between a more capitalist versus a more socialist kind of balancing system. And you can, some people like the general communist philosophy of from each their ability to each their need, and other people, generally the more try-hardy people like us, prefer a system where skill and or even grinding, like just more effort put in the system, but also more skill put in the system, gets you results. So this has been one of those driving forces that underlies the fundamentals of Arena and differentiates it from almost every other product on offer right now. Certainly from every other one on offer by Hearthstone or Blizzard, but also from all of its competitors in other games as well. It's not the only one, but it's a rarity for these things to exist in today's game. And we'll talk about the flip side of that on the bad, because as you know, with capitalism, it's not without its problems, and its problems need to be fixed, or the whole system comes crashing down.
Yep. All right. Should we move on to the bad?
Yes. Okay. So we talked about the good things, and these are like very good things, and they're unlikely to change in the future. Like, can you imagine if the pace of the content becomes significantly slower? No, I can't imagine that for the future of Hearthstone until they shut the game down. Like, I don't know, maybe a decade from now, or like 100 years from now, or whatever. Can you imagine the Arena community becoming super terrible? No, we know who the creators are right now, and like, yeah, I guess culture could super decay or whatever, but generally, I think we're all in good hands, and the community has gotten better, if anything, than from where we were first, and we were starting from a pretty good solid place. And the skill versus luck balance, that's the one that could be changed. They could implement an MMR system, but depending on how severe the MMR system is, as long as you preserve some of that, right? Like, you definitely don't want to get rid of it entirely. Like, maybe for some people, you don't need to get to win 75%, or maybe you can't get to win to 75% because you're not that good enough right now anyway. And so it'll affect you less if they change it. So instead of the top players winning 75%, the top players now win 65%, right? But as long as you keep that dynamic where it's not just 50% is your target, the game's going to have its appeal to to people who like that kind of stuff, which is I imagine that's most people who listen to this podcast because this podcast is kind of for tryhards.
All right. So, uh, first negative thing that you know we don't want to just talk about this as to like, oh, point out the warts. We're hoping that these are things that people are aware of and stay aware of, so that whether it's Arena 2.0 or just going into the future of the game mode, kind of recognizing these things and avoiding it for the future will go a long way for the health of Arena, in its current state, or Arena 2.0. But the first thing is, throughout the years, there's been some really bad metas, and that really comes from just really delayed and bad on the ground balancing, which is much better now, but can still be improved. And it's really hard right now. So it's not hard just because of the new sets that are coming out and the power of the cards. But because of things that can get out of control, and you really want to sort of do more frequent updates, which I know the most team cannot do, right? They have a lot on their plates. Um,
But they should.
but
Like it's the
yeah,
thing, right? Like if you're going to have a balance team that creates a new balance patch every 2 weeks, you can't be reacting. Like that's the problem is that they're all reactive right now, right? They wait for the data to come in and then they react. That's fine if you have a 2 month meta and you have one meta shift. So you release a bunch of cards, you get a little data, you put a patch, you see what you do wrong with the patch, you put out another patch. Boom! In 2 weeks, you're experimenting, and in the rest of the 6 weeks, you're good. You have a good meta that's going. Like that's fine. But if you're gonna have a balance patch come from up top that affects all of Hearthstone every 2 weeks, you got to be predictive. Like this reactive stuff just means that the game is never, ever, ever close to balance, except by pure luck. Because some stuff is going to come that's going to change everything. You don't do anything to, whether because you don't feel confident that you'll be able to make the right predictions, or because you just, it's a lot of effort and time and whatever, and you don't have the resources, but you're not doing it. You're waiting a little bit, then you're patching it, then you got to fix your own patch. So even at the fastest possible iteration of that, you're going to have every other week be a total shit show, except by pure luck. And that's at the absolute fastest. And they're not working at the absolute fastest right now. They do the absolute fastest on the first patch, which is great. Like the 3-day patch is wonderful. Fixes, smooths out the rough edges of the new releases. It's wonderful. But then, whenever one of these like balance patches that happen so frequently comes out, what does the team do? And especially after the mini set comes out, that's probably the worst offender. For whatever reason, whenever a mini set comes out, the arena balance team doesn't do anything about it for like 2 weeks. um, but regardless, we're past the point now where we're just like, hey, you got to do this faster. You got to do this faster. The pace of balancing has picked up to the point where this whole model is untenable. And not just from a resource perspective. This whole model means you're always behind, always behind, always behind. And they really have to find a way to shift to a model where you're doing the adjustments before you have data. And you have to be reasonably good at it so that your first iteration already starts at a decent place. And then once you get the data, you immediately put out the second iteration of your balance changes. And then you're good. Because I think the goal is that you need at least like a 75% uptime of a roughly balanced meta for this game to feel like you can keep playing it instead of like, oh, well, the meta's bad now, I'm gonna have to take a break for a week, which no one like really wants to do if you're like really into this game. So they're not achieving that right now. They're at like at best 50% uptime, if that.
and some of this comes from the system and the way balance is looked upon, that they inherited from their predecessors, right? Which we have always, right now, when you think of Hearthstone balance, you immediately think of adjustments, or micro adjusts. And it's almost as if like, oh yeah, that those are balance changes, and that is what, like, balance changes equals adjustments in that way, in this very cryptic way. um And we kind of take it for granted now. It's like, well, yeah, this is the way balance is. It doesn't have to be. We have been outspoken ever since they talked about micro adjust.
Mm-hmm.
They implemented micro adjust. We have been sort of like, riding around town warning people. It's like this is a bad idea. We don't like it. We've been quiet over the years, not because we are a fan of the idea
Yeah.
now. It's just because there's no point in sort of doing or crying about it. Um, we both still think that this cryptic way to do things sucks. It's complicated for Blizzard, and by this time, there's no like out of all the information that we have and the information that we don't have, geez, um, we know it's not easy for them, and it was really difficult for them. And
Yes.
then they admitted at the end, they were like, okay, when we initially said it was automated, it's not automated, it's by hand. When we initially said it was going to be micro, it wasn't micro, it was actually sometimes like double or triple,
More than
what it was.
that. More than that.
Yeah. Well, that was just for like the regular adjustments,
Uh-huh.
right? Like the regular adjustments could be double or triple, and then there were times in which like stuff was just weird, and they finally admitted after a few years, like, we don't really know. Like, we're not exactly sure about how things work here. And if you just look at their actions, you could tell, yeah, you guys have no idea what's going on. Otherwise,
Yeah, this
you
is
would
the old system,
hopefully,
by the way. This is before the new team took over.
yeah.
But yeah,
So,
so the new team
yeah,
took over and dropped the act that it was automated at all, or I guess it was like partially automated. Only one person knew how to do it, and it wasn't done well, and that person left. So the new team was just like, we'll adjust it by hand, and now this is where we are.
yep. But yes, this was one of those things that, uh, man, like it was just really disappointing.
Yeah,
And it goes to uh like the I hate to keep railing on the old team, but it does make a good juxtaposition with the new modes team with Matt London, and the communication is so much better. Well, there's actually communication now. Um,
you're skipping to the second bad.
well, yeah, no, it goes into it, right?
Okay.
So we
So
should just go
FYI, the
into it.
second bad is dev communications.
And
So yeah,
I vehemently believe that if there from the old team, if there was this level of communication, if there was this level of support slash work, just the pure amount of work or the pure amount of care, and just the sort of explanation, like, okay, I kept talking about before, it's like, what the Overwatch team did with like Jeff Kaplan, right? And how he would come out and he would explain things, and even if the community was angry about something, he would be there to be like, I understand. I think you're right in these ways. I disagree with you in these other ways, but I hear you. Here's what we're gonna do in the meantime. It won't satisfy you completely, but we'll work on it. And that was enough for the Overwatch community. That's pretty much what we're seeing right now from Matt London.
mm-hmm.
I think there are a lot of things that a lot of the creators would disagree with the team in terms of um, not just the speed of things, but just exactly how things are implemented, and that's fine because the communication is great. Um, there, there's a lot more communications behind the scenes that you guys probably don't even see. It's
Shh, don't break
fantastic.
the NDA, even to compliment
Well,
them.
no, but like this is the stuff that makes me very happy that
Yeah.
the new team is where it's at. And it makes me really sad because I think that the old team, if there even was a team, I have no idea. I have no idea who worked on it. I think they like really killed the arena. And it's like if you're sad that Hafu and Krip and Amaz left, those people were champs for staying
Yeah.
with Arena
For
for as
so
long as they
long
did.
with like no
Like
real
Arena
support.
didn't deserve Hafu playing it for that long.
Yeah.
Arena didn't deserve Crypt playing it for that long.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's a real damn shame. I think I'm not saying that like these players would still be here today, but it's a real damn shame that they did not get more with the amount of support and with the passion that they had for Arena.
Yep. The communications, like going back to the balancing a bit. It's we talk a lot about like, the current balancing and what they're doing right now and its legacy, but like they've tried other balancing stuff in the past before that had more communication at the time, or at least they were listening to people, right? Even if they were not like reaching out to us behind the scenes or whatever, they were clearly like sort of because they had to adjust. And I'm talking about buckets. We were so far past the bucket era that we don't even like remember what happened there, but they had to keep updating the buckets like every time they released anything, anytime they changed the meta, like that was a lot of work that went into that. And they clearly didn't just do it by themselves. They were using some kind of mix of algorithm and they were listening to like people and whatever. But it was still so bad. Because it's not like the thing with communication, it sounds easy, right? Like just listen to what the people who know how this game actually works in terms of the player experience, which is your top players, and then like do the things that they feel the most strongly about that doesn't screw over the rest of your player base, right? Like remove their bias because as top players we all have biases, and then implement whatever it is, right? That sounds really easy, but that involves one knowing the right questions to ask because if you're not communicating you're not asking the questions at all, right? You're not asking any questions. And we just got to spew a lot of stuff at you. And it's not just us. Just the player base has a million ideas. So you have to know which ideas to listen to and who to listen to for which ideas. It's so I'm not saying it's easy. This isn't like, oh, communicate. Like it's a skill. And the old team, even when they were doing stuff that was arena related, the few times that they were doing on the ground arena stuff that was taking actual man hours out of their other work, so they're actually putting resources into this, their communication was shit. Their listening was shit. Their I don't know if they communicated to other people, but certainly not to us. Um, and they would do stuff, and you'd be like, "Where did this come from? Why? Who would possibly like?" It makes me think that they didn't actually talk to anybody who knew Arena because, or at least not with their final decision stuff, because some of the stuff that came out would be so out of left field that you're just like, "What?" That was like a high percentage of the decisions. That wasn't just like a one off here or there, right? Like here, we point out the one offs all the time. We're like, well, they made all these adjustments, but somehow they think the Divine Shield Giver, the candle whatever guy in the new patch that was a neutral, needed a nerf in offering rate. It doesn't. Like you talk to anybody who's played with this card who's good at the game. It does not need. It's not a problem. It does not need an offering rate adjustment down, but they felt like it did. Like I don't know where it comes from, but like whatever, right? Like that was one out of like the 30 changes that they made. That was like out of nowhere, and I can't really explain it. You look at the old team with the communications, and that was like a third to half of their changes would seem like it comes out of nowhere. So it was really frustrating for us for the last 8 years to be so invested in a game and to have such a good community behind the game and to be given nothing on the communication side. Whether us or other people, maybe other people got a little communication, but if they did, it was not good, as we've established. And so that was a real like low in the experience, I think, of just being arena content creators for so long. And thankfully, that all changed like almost overnight, like a little over a year ago, and it's been where it should have been all along, right? Like, yeah, it doesn't seem like this new communication thing is taking up a huge amount of dev resources, although it certainly takes up some amount of dev resources. And I think you just get a lot better results when you're in touch with the player base that's playing these games repeatedly at a level in which they're understanding the game probably better than the developers. I mean, I hope better than the developers. Players always understand the game better than the developers for skill based games. That's just how it is because your developers can't be the best players. And in a game where it's a pure thinking game, like yeah, BGs has like APM, but like Arena's a pure thinking game, very little APM, very no like dexterity involved. Then your player base is just better at this kind of like analysis stuff. Maybe not better at game design, right? So I'm not saying like oh the developers should just listen to whatever the top players say, but they should listen, right? And maybe selectively implement, but definitely listen and ask questions, um, because this isn't like, hey, I point and click at things real good, and so I shoot better, and so that's why I'm better at your game than you. This is I'm better at your game than you because I know the game better. I understand it better as a top player. That's how all strategy games are. Okay, so that was a bad and frustrating part. So the final bad part of Arena, and you should look at this with what I was talking about before, the capitalism v socialism thing and the skill versus luck balance, because it's tied together. And that is the new player experience. So the new
Yeah, I think it's important to touch upon this last because this is like the best sort of like if Arena 2.0 is going to succeed, or if this iteration of Arena is to succeed and develop and grow, this is key. It's
Mhm.
not the tryhards, it's not like oh, will Judge get like better than his what was it like fourth place finish on the leaderboards? Like that kind of stuff. People in chat might care about. Obviously, like Judge's community cares about it, and it's a great accomplishment for him. But that's not what's going to grow Arena. It's going to be the new player experience, and let's face it, it is terrible right now.
And it
If
just gets
you,
worse. Every year it
it
gets
keeps getting
worse.
worse. Yes,
It's consistently gotten worse. Because
yes.
they haven't really done anything about it. There's been literally no change to the new player experience since launch, or to our
So
knowledge.
let's talk about exactly sort of where we're at because we're like 9 years into the game. All new players get is the new players queue for like what, 3 games or something.
3 runs.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 3 runs.
And it's not
They
a new
get
player queue. They just assume that you have one extra loss already.
they just give
So
them a handicap.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's not even that big of a handicap because from matchmaking, most of matchmaking, especially if you're a new player, you're not going to get like 9 wins or whatever. Most likely, that's the equivalent of having like one less win. So your 2-0 deck will be treated as a 1-0 deck. Your 3-1 deck will be treated as a 2-1 deck. Like it's a little bump, but it's not like a transformational change here.
Yep. No, it's not enough. And if anything, what Arena does is just completely annihilate new players.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is one of those things where if you talk about MMR and how MMR, we want to keep out of the game, MMR would be good for these players, right? It's part of the
Mm-hmm.
reason why, like, if you look at, I keep talking about Overwatch. If you look at like grandmaster players, top 500 players. But I mean, especially in that game, because skill expression is everything, right? Like you
Mm-hmm.
could just click heads all the time in that game. But if you look at that versus look at people in bronze or silver, I mean, it's a huge discrepancy, and those players should not be like anywhere in the same zip
And
code.
that's a team based game. It would be very terrible for everyone involved if they did that.
That would be very terrible. Here, like even noobs can high roll a little bit, but you see some really bad, questionable plays, not just like ordering, just like terrible throws sometimes, and you got to feel bad for the person. They're probably new account, they're spending their hard-earned gold that they could be buying packs with, or even money, right? Like they could actually be spending money on it. We need to help the new player experience, and beyond just the matchmaking and how they can get pounded, um, beyond that, what is waiting for them? A game that is getting more and more complex in terms of number one mechanics, and number two in this game mode, there are many hidden factors. Nobody likes these things. Nobody likes these hidden things. It's funny because when um when they made the change in constructed to the Death Knight Discover kind of thing, I think it was, some like constructive players chimed in, and I think like Kibler was one of them as well. It's like, hey, this isn't the be all end all, but it's really kind of like bad whenever you have a game that has unwritten rules in it,
Yeah.
right? And it's like, if you could be very good at the game, but because you didn't read this like blog post or like release, um you might just consider yourself unlucky. It's like, oh, why am
Mm,
I not seeing paparazzi? Right? Like it's a
mm,
common card. Why am I not seeing paparazzi? Like, all of my logic should be good, and your logic is good. It's being artificially held back, significantly so. And that is something that really takes away from the new player experience because and once you learn about this, man, I would be frustrated.
yeah.
I keep talking about how I don't play League of Legends because of the complexity
Mm-hmm.
and
Same.
and the learning curve involved. Now, if there was also hidden factors, like every single patch, the paper damage that you see is actually not the exact damage that you deal. It's filtered through another thing. And I have to understand that, like, oh, this damage, or oh, this cooldown, they say it's 5 seconds. It was actually adjusted like to be 4 seconds. But nowhere does it say it in the game. I would be like, screw this. I'm definitely not playing this game. So these are things that I said before, we take it for granted now. We're just like, oh yeah, there's hidden
Mm-hmm.
adjustments. Nobody will ever understand all the rules of the game. If you're a nerd and you want to understand, go pour through HS Replay in order to really understand it. And like, oh, look at these people that get high in the leaderboards, right? Judge and Dreads and Redbeard and the people who don't even stream, right? It's like they don't have it memorized. Yeah, they don't have it memorized, but they know.
Mm-hmm.
Like they know these things. They understand implicitly what it means. Um, these are all things that hold back new players from enjoying the game when they don't know, and then they get frustrated once they do know. That really, really sucks for new players, and this has to be changed. And it's the number one reason why I think you kind of have to go with some sort of Arena 2.0. Because
Yeah.
if you change Arena 1.0 to not have all of these things that we've seen for so many years, it essentially is Arena 2.0. So
Yeah.
that's got to change, and I think we'll be in a good place if those things do change because I think for so many years we've like asked this question at the end of the at the end of the year um question session. It's like, would you recommend Arena to friends? I'm like,
Yeah.
no, I
No.
wouldn't.
No. No. No.
I wouldn't
Yeah.
recommend Arena
People do this
to
all the time
people.
because they're like, oh, whatever. Sometimes I mention that I stream on Twitch. Oh, what game do you play? I'm like Hearthstone, but just the arena game mode. And they're like, oh, I haven't, whatever. I'll check it out. And I'm always like, I wouldn't recommend you do that. Like, it's not particularly easy or fun to get into right now. But you do you. Maybe you'll like it.
Right.
It's awkward because this is what I do, right? And I really love this game, and I can't recommend it, and I haven't been able to for like 5 of the last 8 years, I guess.
But having said that, because we've gone through positives, we've gone through negatives, we don't want to just be like, and this is why we're quitting because it sucks. I do want to end it on
Oh,
a
I don't
sort
want to
of
end it yet. I got more
well,
stuff
no,
to
no,
say
no,
about the
not
new player
end it, but
experience.
like, yeah, yeah, but like, I do want to say that like, the reason that we're pointing these things out is like, you don't talk about something that's completely hopeless, right? Or I wouldn't. Um, I think you point this out because like there are many things you can do. And I think it's like from the pretty healthy viewer numbers of all of these arena content creators, I'm just like, wow, this is surprising.
Yes.
Because nobody would watch Dreads otherwise. Like the man is vile. He has like no discernible personality. He's disgusting, but people love watching a limited format, and it goes back to all of these positives and all of these things specifically about Hearthstone Arena that people like. So you have something here. Like it's very, I'm not gonna say savable, like because Arena doesn't even like save, but it's very much so like able to be rejuvenated and to like blossom again.
Yeah, Arena 2.0. It's that's what's needed. And like we keep saying this new player experience. It's not really a new player experience that I'm worried about. We call it the new player experience. That's the term that's thrown around. That's a kind of a normal industry like game dev and gameplay like kind of terminology. What we mean by it is bad player experience. That's why I started off with the example of everybody gives $1 and then one person becomes a billionaire before. Well, here we're not dealing with everybody giving $1. All the arena players are too good. That's kind of the problem right now. All the people who still play arena are too good. So when you put a new player in or a bad player in, they get crushed. They don't win 3 games and lose 3 games. They don't even win 2 games and lose 3 games, as the math says that they should, right? Because the math says, remember going back to the example of everybody loses $1. Nobody notices it. That's the only reason it works. If instead everybody notices it and $1 is huge because you're not actually losing $1, you're losing $10,000, then no one's gonna go around. Like, everyone's gonna notice. There's gonna be uprisings. Like your society falls apart at that point. You cannot build something where everybody's losing $10,000, and the math doesn't even add up for that. So why does it feel like whenever someone is stepping into the arena, even after a break, like I sometimes like take like a new meta comes in and I step in and I'm like, oh shit, I'm averaging 3 wins per run. Like, I'm a really good player. But I don't know what all these cards do. I haven't played with, most of these cards. And so I'm getting 3 wins per run. And, pretty quickly I work my way back up to 7 wins per run. Like, we're talking like in like a few runs or whatever before I get my average up. But I know what I'm doing. Like, I really know what I'm doing. For all the players who are, maybe coming back or trying to come back every now and then, who are trying to play this casually even, or who are like just not as good at the game as other people. Like, it is a terrible, terrible, terrible experience that beats you down. So rather than in the reality of the arena, rather than everybody giving $1 and then some players become infinite or like whatever, it's some players give $1, but then all the players that you really want to stay, which are the casuals and the new players, which are the people that should form the base of any game. Every single game is driven by a base of casuals and new players. Without that, the game cannot succeed. Arena has been in that position for many, many, many years, where there are no new players, there are very few casual players, and their experiences suck. So the fix, like right now, it's not that everybody's giving $1, it's that most people are giving $1, and then anybody who wants to become part of the world, like let's say all the newborns, and all the people who are bankrupt and destitute and whatever, they're being charged $10,000. What happens in that world? What happens in that world is that the destitute people die, stop playing, okay, commit suicide, okay, kind of a dark example, but game wise, they leave the pool, right? And the newborns just don't become newborns. Why would you bring someone in? Why would you bring someone into this cruel world that will take $10,000 away from them immediately and give it to a billionaire? Why would you do that? So, if you want a healthy society and a healthy world, you have to create some kind of, if not incentives, at least make it so they don't notice. So you keep everything level. And that's what we don't have right now. And if you're going back to the whole socialism v capitalism thing, that's why nowhere really is like a pure capitalist society. There's always safety nets. There's always socialist elements. America's pretty bad about it, just to give an example, because we're both Americans. But even we have safety nets. And in Arena, there are no safety nets. And the new players get taxed and pummeled immediately. And the people who are bad get pummeled even worse. So it's the exact opposite of what should be happening. Now, you look at successful capitalist societies, and you see that the people who are bad at the game, so to speak, and the people who are new at the game and therefore bad but could potentially be good in the future, they get perks. They get the safety net to help either carry them indefinitely because they're just that bad and you want them to stay alive, or they get perks to help them rise up because they are a new player or something has changed in their life or like whatever, right? And so you put the safety net in so that you can help a portion of these players become contributing members of the society, or in this case, players who know kind of what they're doing. And then you always have the people who have no idea what they're doing and will never have any idea what they're doing, and you just carry them. And that's fine. because the society generates enough excess so that you can do this without like destroying your whole society. This is a real world example of just how capitalism works in any place that capitalism does work. Whereas Arena right now is too pure of a form because there is no safety net. So rather than creating an MMR system that kind of swoops in and subjects everybody to flatten everything, like all you need to really do is to swoop the MMR system or some other kind of bad player experience subsidy system to lift the bottom up. And when lifting the bottom up, you need to give them a path so that they can get to the top, which is what Merps was talking about with having rules that you can actually understand. So you can build Arena 2.0 and come up with all these fancy ideas that people have, like, oh, draft 33 cards and then you can, ditch 3 cards, or like have synergy picks be more of a thing, but like better implemented, asterisk, who knows what the hell better implemented means. And that's all good and fine, but none of that will make Arena a sustainable game that will ever grow. Because all of that will just create, it doesn't solve the fundamental problem that if I'm a game developer, that's what I see. You give me the Arena game mode, I don't really care about balance, I don't really care about the existing player base. I care about, if you want me to like make this into a main game mode, I'm trying to figure out why would anyone play this game who's not already playing this game? And the answer, or like, and why would people, how do people engage with the game in a casual way? Like, I only got like a couple hours this week, I'll play Arena. And then that feels good, and then I do it again next week, and maybe I do a little more of it, right? Like, it's video games, right? It's kind of like crack. Like, you gotta have some kind of thing like going for it. So right now, all Arena has going for it, for most people who we want to play the game, is that it is innately an interesting and fun game mode. And after that, you just get beaten repeatedly with a stick whenever you try to play with it. So there needs to be a system, and that system has to be number one. A lot of other people focus on things like, oh, create incentives to play the Arena, right? Like, give more free Arena tickets, or advertise Arena, have events that are just Arena focused. You get people into the Arena. That's not even the problem. I don't want anyone in the Arena. That's why we don't recommend anybody come and play the Arena right now. Because yes, there is a marketing problem with the Arena where there are not enough new players even coming into the Arena. That is true. But you don't want to exhaust your pool of people who try the Arena when Arena is a shit product. Like, bottom of the barrel, totally shit product for new players and bad players. That's gonna have like no retention, and you're gonna just be wasting whatever you're doing, or just using up the pool even if you don't waste any resources, because it's all pixels anyway. So the biggest thing Arena needs right now, we've covered communications with top players. That's already being done right now. We've covered on-the-ground balancing. That's hard. Like, that's just really hard. But this is the low-hanging fruit. Now, you can't just do it in the current system, so it needs to be Arena 2.0. You need to program some stuff in. You need to deal with the spaghetti code. This is not a I adjust numbers kind of situation, right? This is not a, you will not get a significantly more amount of Arena players if you like gave everyone 50 more gold per Arena run. Like, that is the definition of a safety net, right? Like, but that's not going to make it more fun for these people. So you want to keep these people engaged and keep these people developing, you need to come up with a system. And if that's an MMR system, so be it. MMR systems could work good for a certain segment of the people, namely bad players, including new players. But at some point, you don't want this to be the entire endgame. You want them to get out of the kiddie pool and then hit the place where when they improve further, their win rate goes up. Like, that is such a key carrot, that when you are better, you win more. And that's a concept that Arena does really well. So, like, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? Like, the baby is the good system that we have here in the Arena, where you reward skilled players. The bathwater is the crap and the muck that is dragging down bad players. You can throw the bathwater out and keep the baby mostly intact. Like, that's my vision for the future of Arena in any kind of Arena 2.0 system. And I mean, this is the most important thing. The new player experience, the bad player experience is the most important thing. This is the problem that needs to be solved first before anything else matters. So however long it takes them to solve this, whatever needs to be implemented, I really hope, and I'm sure they will. They're game developers. I'm not here like saying something like groundbreaking from a game development point of view. I'm here saying something that may be something that's getting a little less attention than it should from the arena community because we're not generally too worried about new players so much as we're worried about ourselves and people like us. But from a game development perspective, I will bet money that that is like number one on their list, above balance, above recruiting people, above fixing bugs. Even like I'm sure number one is whatever we're doing with the arena or the next limited format. We need a better bad player experience.
Yep. All right. So I feel like we should end it on a positive note. And I'm not saying this is definitively the end, okay? But it could be the end.
Well, it's the end for at least like 2.5 months, bare
Sure,
minimum.
sure. And if it is the end, in that fashion, man, it's been really fun, and I think the arena is in really good hands. And man, I hope Matt and team have like something big up their sleeve that they're just like working on right now.
Mm,
That would be awesome. And I think if they did that, there is a really healthy appetite for something like that. Um, because you also see it when, like, for example, whenever Hafu like comes back to play the arena just for like a stream, right? Or somebody really random, like Summit 1G, like plays Arena,
yes,
right?
I
There
remember
is
that.
a huge amount of interest, even from his like, community that knows nothing about the game. I was in Summit 1G stream and they're like, hey, this is kind of cool. They were laughing at him and whatever, but there is just something about the format that is
Mm,
really, really cool. And that's why I think that there is going to be continued interest, and if Arena 2.0 comes out, I think there's a good chance that it just pops off.
yeah, I think it has a very good pop off potential because right now there's no dominant TCG anymore. Like it used to
Yeah.
be Hearthstone. I don't think it's Hearthstone anymore, but it's also not Hearthstone. It's just kind of a pool right now, and everybody's kind of in their own little corner doing their own thing. But just as a general gaming thing right now and a general world thing, I think there's a big appetite for people to want to be united into something really good. Like and all be doing the same thing and sharing the same kind of platform. The way that Hearthstone was back in the day, the way that like WoW was back in its heyday, and the way Overwatch was for the first few years of its lifetime. And Blizzard is really good at doing that, right? Like whatever Blizzard is bad at, Blizzard has consistently delivered at that. And I don't know, maybe they've bled so much talent that it's hard to like do make lightning. What is it like? Capture lightning in a bottle like the fifth time in a row or whatever. But I have hope for D4. But D4 is also a weird product. Diablo is always a weird product. But Arena and Hearthstone, I think, has a really good chance of being able to unite the strategy community if, like, the way like Battlegrounds did, for example, like just something that is big but not too big, but then everybody comes in and plays it because it was so good. Now, not really what Battlegrounds is these days, but I have hope for Arena to for Arena 2.0 to do something like that. Because you look at what we talked about. Old dev communications were bad. The new team already fixed that. The consistently bad, balancing. They do have to climb over the hump, but that only affects really like the top players if it's not super horrible. So I don't think that's going to gate the overall success so much as it's going to gate the longevity of the success of Arena 2.0. And all the other stuff is good. The fundamentals are super good. The structure that they've set up around it with the releases of the new cards and the community and the current like luck v skill balance and the ability to win more than 50%, that's all really good. There's enough. The fundamentals are super good actually. You just got to tweak some of the rougher edges around like the draft could be more exciting. maybe don't go to 12 wins. That's kind of people's attention spans are getting even shorter nowadays from 8 years ago when this game launched. Like that, the games are getting longer for that matter. Because of the cards and complexity and whatnot. So, maybe drop that down. But the fundamentals are good. The only thing that is bad about the fundamentals is the bad player experience in Arena. That is the only thing that is bad and has always been bad and has just gotten worse. So fix that and you got a hit on your hands. Like a wider applicability hit, not just people who listen to this podcast thinking it's good or bad.
All right.
All
There we
right.
go.
That's it. That is the final episode of the Lightforge podcast after 8 years and almost 400 episodes.
I have nothing more to say. That's it. Thanks everyone for listening. Maybe we'll be back. Maybe we won't be. But if we're not back, it's been a hell of a ride.
It's been an absolute pleasure and an experience of my life to be able to share all these episodes with you guys. Thank you guys so much for your support as listeners, as mods, as our YouTube editors, and whatnot. Just everybody. The community is wonderful. The community on the Grinning Go, the community in Hearthstone Arena, community in Hearthstone generally and wider. It's been great. So this is ADWCTA.
This is Merps. See you guys.